Kirk absolutely crushes the room with facts and logic after an Apache man comes up to him and asks, "Hey now, shouldn't white people apologize and pay for all the harm they've caused to the native people of the Americas?" Guys, this is a good one. I really enjoyed it. I think you will too. It's gonna be a lot of fun. We get to see some of the, one could say, more challenging arguments by the left and how to counter it. I know I appreciated it and you probably will too. So we're gonna get right into it. But first, everybody, please make sure you like our video, share it around, and subscribe to the Resist the Mainstream YouTube channel. As always, I'm your host, Darian, and let's jump right into the video.
Well, I'm sorry to bring this up, but you know, I'm part Apache, I'm part Mexican, and you know, I've been thinking, shouldn't America, white America, acknowledge, I guess, some of the wrongs that the white colonists have imposed on native tribes? And if so, how can we correct that?
Okay, I think that's probably been done, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, is there not a federal bureau of, they call it Indian Affairs, but Native American Affairs, right?
They do a very poor job at what they're doing.
Oh, I agree with that. I mean, anything government touches is awful, but the whole premise, the premise of the program was quasi-apologetic reparations, wasn't it? Now, what I will say though is the question I'll take a little bit of an objection to. Let me tell you why. I'm white, and I don't owe anybody an apology for something I did not individually do.
Amen.
I had nothing to do with the exploitation of Native Americans. I think it was wrong. I think it's wrong what Andrew Jackson did. Abraham Lincoln was no hero either. But I'm my own individual, my own person. So I'm not going to apologize on behalf of a skin group.
Judging people as individuals? That's racist. You can't do that. I say that as a joke, but there are people who will seriously argue that. Not kidding.
Nor should I think anyone should be compelled to do the same. Now, as far as how to empower indigenous people and Native American tribes, we've done everything wrong. Native American communities are the worst example of socialist failed experiments, in my personal opinion. High government dependency, widespread corruption, abuse by elders. If you want to look at where the government has messed up terribly, it's on Native American reservations. And so I'm not going to apologize for something I didn't do, but I will recognize that there has been about a 30 to 40 year mistreatment, mostly designed by big government liberals, by the way, coming in with a lot of promises to these reservations. And unfortunately, the statistics show that most Native American reservations are the most alcohol addicted, drug addicted, suicidal, and hopeless square miles in America. Any thoughts?
No, thank you very much.
Hang tight, everybody, because we have another Charlie clip coming right up. By the way, I do have a sneaking suspicion that perhaps this Apache gentleman here kind of likes Charlie, or what he's pushing for at the very least, and was kind of asking that question to get a good answer out of him. I don't know. I say that because I noticed him kind of nodding at the end. He's like, yeah. And then at the end just says thank you and walks off. It's almost as if he was trying to set Charlie up to make a good argument against that left-wing position that some people will hold. So, hey, kudos to you, good sir. If that's what you were doing, that's pretty cool. And if it's not what you're doing, well, you seem like you're a nice guy who's willing to have a conversation anyways. So we also appreciate that. Now, to address that point that Charlie brought up about how natives have so much welfare given to them, yet still have so much misery and alcoholism and poverty in the community, check this out. Ever heard of the Arizona Native Scholars Grant? So this, you have these kinds of grants in just about every state in the country. So Arizona's just one example, but it's one I happen to know a little bit about. So thought I would share. So look over here. The Arizona Native Scholars Grant is an institutional grant program that ensures the tuition, fees, and college fee are covered for Native Arizona resident undergraduate students seeking their first bachelor's degree. The amount of ANS grant will be different for each student depending on the amount of gift aid, federal Pell Grant, merit tuition scholarships, institutional aid, and other non-tribal scholarships they receive. And then it says that it can only be applied to tuition, but it doesn't cover books, parking, housing, or meal plan. But it covers all the tuitions. That's pretty good. Now, something you may notice about this is this grant essentially gives free college to every single person who belongs to a tribe in Arizona, without exception. So as long as they're pursuing their first bachelor's degree, which that's everyone who goes to college, right? You pursue your first bachelor's degree by definition the first time you go. So let's scroll down a little bit and check this out. It says here, please note, ANS does not require students to demonstrate financial need and to be eligible. So that means you can be rich, you can be poor, middle class, it doesn't matter. You go to college, you're getting the scholarship. Full ride, all of the tuition covered. Pretty dang good if you ask me. I know I would have enjoyed that when I went to college. And it's very forgiving too. Note this, current students not meeting the deadlines above will automatically be considered for the ANS grant in future semesters. So even if a student totally messes up and drops the ball, they're still gonna get most of that reward. It's pretty good. And then right over here, it tells you what is the amount of the A&S grant. The A&S grant amount will vary for each student who receives it. It will cover the student's remaining, right here it says it, remaining tuition fees and college fee after all other gift aid has been applied. That literally means they will pay for all of your college tuition. Let's say you're not the brightest tool in the shed. You get, I don't know, only a $500 scholarship out of $80,000. Cool, thanks A&S, here's $79,500. Quite the deal. So it sounds like, as far as I'm concerned, there has been an opportunity to atone for these people. And it keeps going too, to a point where you can be totally unqualified, not even know what you're doing, but you get your whole tuition covered as long as you meet some basic deadlines. That's a sweet deal. And lest you didn't believe me, here are various examples that the University of Arizona website gives themselves. $745 Pell Grant and a $3,000 Wildcat Tuition Award. Well, look at that. Base tuition is $12,500. They take off this much for the scholarship that the student already got. Oh, looky here, they're granting them almost $10,000. Sweet deal. All that to say, guys, next time somebody tells you that we're not doing enough to atone for our racist and terrible past against the Indian Americans, maybe just tell them about the Arizona Native Scholarship. Or, you know, any of the other Native scholarships that we give in just about every single state in the whole country. Yeah. In this next fun clip, Charlie Kirk will talk about why white privilege is a stupid and racist myth. You gotta love it.
White privilege is a racist myth that is rooted in bigotry, trying to classify people based on their skin color. If you are a racist, you have something to apologize for. If you're a white person who is not a racist, you have nothing to apologize for. And anyone who makes you apologize just based on the color of their skin, of your skin, they're the racist and you're not.
Facts.
It's that simple.
Say it loud.
And so, this idea of our systems are racist also does not stand up against any sort of cross-examination of different ethnic groups in our country. White people, on average, if you were to classify it, and again, I don't like the over-racialization of our country, but if that's where the left wants to lead this, the facts don't even support their entire charge against our country, is that Asian Americans and Indian Americans are far wealthier on average in our country than white Americans. This idea that every single white person in the country is living a life of luxury and convenience is totally untrue. And according to not just the Hoover Institution, but U.S. Census data and government labor data, this is the greatest statistic to dispel it, which is that a black child raised by a mother and father is more likely to succeed by every independent metric than a white child who is raised by a single mother. Now, I'm not bashing single mothers. I think that they're modern day heroes. The point is that there's two-parent privilege in our country, not white privilege in our country. And if we're serious about rebuilding the black family, which we should be putting fathers back in the home.
It's totally true too. Fun fact, during the time of the Jim Crow South, around the 60s, blacks were doing far better than they were today. We're talking economically, in terms of criminal conviction rates, all of those types of things. What was the main difference? Well, for one, back then, 1 out of 4 black people was in a single parent household. Now that number has skyrocketed to 3 out of 4. Thanks, I would argue, in great part, due to the push of the Great Society by Lyndon Baines Johnson, a former US president who very infamously had a quote attributed to him that went something like, "We'll have those N-words voting Democrat for over 200 years. That's what was said after the Democrat Party essentially took the black woman, divorced her from her husband, and married her to the US government instead. That's not a hyperbolic statement, by the way. They would literally give welfare checks exclusively to women who are single parents and would penalize them if they got married and not give them those payments for their children.
But be very careful to try to connect disparities necessarily with discrimination. And so there's other parts of privilege as well in our country that are non-racial privilege. For example, anyone here the firstborn child? I am. You know that you have an exponentially higher likelihood of succeeding than the second child or the third child or the youngest child? You ever heard of firstborn privilege? Probably not. How about anyone here an only child? You have way higher likelihood of succeeding. Every independent study shows this. Now, we can laugh and chuckle, of course. The point is that there are different inputs at times for why certain disparities are created. And blaming all of it on deep-seated, harbored racial resentment is not just incorrect, it's really corrosive for all of us. Instead of just looking at skin color, look at other circumstantial factors such as education, such as two-parent households. And the argument that the activists will make, and I'm sure someone here will make the argument, is that racism created those systems, right? That it was racist. And I can actually agree with part of that. Just be very specific of what systems those are. And if we're serious about improving the livelihood of our fellow countrymen, maybe we should be less focused on government welfare and more focused on work and literacy education and bringing fathers back into the home.
Amen. You know, guys, it's my opinion that Democrats don't actually want black people to succeed. I think they want to keep them as perpetual victims, constantly tell them, oh, the world's so terrible, you're so bad, and that way they keep getting their votes. I mean, just look at what LBJ said about it. Doesn't that speak for itself? I'm curious to hear what you guys think. Let me know in the comments below, and also just let us know what you thought of this video. Thanks so much for tuning in, and most importantly, God bless.